All right, everybody, we're back. Um, I remembered a setting that is going to increase my performance a little bit. You don't have to do this but if some of you who are running either on an older machine or you're running AutoCAD in Parallels or maybe VMware or maybe even OpenBox where performance is going to be an issue, you might get some mileage out of this. So back here in the bottom right-hand corner under Customization, I'm going to left-click, and I'm going to come up and I want to make sure dynamic input is checked so that I can turn my dynamic input off. Right now it's gray, which means it's off. So I'm going to click on that. Any one of these icons that's blue means it's on. I want my dynamic input off so that actually you'd be surprised at how much resources on if you're struggling for it. Dynamic input uses more resources than you would really think because there's a lot more that AutoCAD has to keep track of in terms of generating live information on the screen. So from now on in these videos, you're going to see things look a little bit differently than what you've got, but everything should function exactly the same. Okay, so we just wrapped up taking care of the column grids. We just put the walls in place. I'm going to modify this last line over here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to grab a hold of this grip, and I just clicked on it and left click. Zoom out, and I'm going to repeat on the other side. Come down, hold my mouse. Now I can either click right now, which will automatically use the stretch command, or I can come down and select lengthen, which means it will be constrained to the angle in which it was currently drawn. Okay, now that that line is in the right spot, I want to put it on the correct layer. S columns grid is not the right layer, so I'm going to select this. I'm going to go up in my list, and the layer that I actually want is A floor-E. So this line basically, if you've ever stood on an apartment balcony, that line represents the edge of the concrete before you step off the edge of the balcony. Easy enough to remember. Now, truthfully, I'm not a big fan of having this grid on here, and if you notice as I pan around and as I zoom, AutoCAD actually takes some time to show me this grid. So I'm going to turn that grid off, and it just one more little thing or one less thing for AutoCAD to have to manually show me all the time. Zoom extents so I can see what's going on. There we go. Okay. I am going to use my offset command. OF for offset. Now you can see as I'm typing things in, things are no longer showing up at my cursor, but they're still showing up down here in my command line. So that's the only difference that dynamic input really does, is it keeps your command line kind of up and operating at your cursor. So I want my offset distance to be 3 foot 3. Push return, and I'm going to offset both of my horizontal grid lines inward to the inside of the apartment. 3 foot 3. There we go. I'm done with my offset. I'm going to push return. Type TR at the command prompt. TR, not T. And I only want these items, these inside grid lines that I just created, those are going to be my only cutting elements. So I push return. I'm done selecting my cutting elements. And now I want to click on the items I want to trim. I'm going to trim just the wall lines out. I want to leave that column grid exactly where it is. Okay, I'm done with that. Push return. I'm going to erase those previous elements. Now, you may remember this, you may not. AutoCAD keeps track of the last items that you selected, so when it's asking me to select objects, I can either click on each one of these items individually, or I can type P for previous, and it remembers those last two lines. I'm done selecting my objects, I press return. I'm going to change my current layer. Ta-da-da. Come on. There we go. And the current layer that I want is, no, not E-Light. There it is. Whoop, stop moving. There we go. A glaze E, so glazing. So this is your window layer. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to zoom in on this area right over here. Not that I can get a whole lot of additional screen real estate here. And I'm going to draw two rectangles. Actually, I'm going to draw a few more, but I'm going to start off with two. REC for a rectangle. And I'm going to move up and hover over this endpoint to get my object tracking to appear. Drag my mouse down, type 2 at the command prompt. So the first corner of my window starts 2 inches below the endpoint of that line. I'm then going to snap on the endpoint of the adjacent line. So when I zoom in, I've got a little bitty rectangle that looks like that. I'm basically going to repeat the process on this side. Zoom in a little. Here we go. Okay. REC. And it doesn't matter if I start on the inside or the outside. Okay. Hover my mouse over the endpoint. Oh, come on, start the command. REC. Return. There we go. Hover my mouse over the endpoint. Move my mouse up. I haven't clicked yet. Type 2, press return. Now all I have to do... Oh, man. The coordinates are off, so I click to cancel. REC. Press return. Starting here. Haven't clicked. Hover. Move up. 2. Return. There we go. Now I can just click on that endpoint. There it is. That's what I was wanting. Okay, I'm going to draw a line. And I'm going to draw a line from this inside corner there we go, to this outside edge. Press return. Now, I'm going to show you sort of a down and dirty way that you can create a pair of sliding doors. In this case, we're creating 4 sliding doors. So I'm going to create a rectangle, and I'm going to go from the middle of this diagonal line. Now I can left click right here. You see where my crosshairs are, and you see where that green triangle is just a little below it on the screen. If I left click right now, I will actually begin drawing my rectangle where that green triangle is. So left click. I'm going to come up to where the green circle is. Same deal. The green circle, green square. Left click. Okay. I'm going to repeat that down here. REC for the rectangle. I'm going to start at the middle. Left click. Move down. Left click again. I'm now going to scale these items. SC for scale. SC. There we go. Select just these 2 rectangles. That's all I want to scale. Okay, specify my base point. I'm going to come up here to the top of my sliding door unit. And my base point, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this, is going to be the inside edge of the jamb, the midpoint, or it's going to be the inside end of the rectangle. So it's the end point of that rectangle for the door, or the midpoint of the jamb. It all depends on where you hold your mouse. It amounts to the same thing. So left click. What is my scale factor? It's 0.5. Press return. I'll zoom out. I now want to mirror those objects. MI, press return. What items do I want to mirror? Well, it's my previous 2 items that I was modifying. So P for previous. I'm done selecting my objects. I press return. Okay. The first point of my mirror line is, it's either going to be this let me zoom in so you can see it, because these points coincide, which is why I say it could be more than one thing. If I hold my mouse over the diagonal line, I'm snapping to the midpoint of that diagonal line. Or it can be the endpoint, that corner of that rectangle, or it can be this other point of that rectangle. Really doesn't matter. All those points. So I'm going to left click here, drag my mouse horizontally, make sure I'm on my axis lock. It doesn't matter what the distance is, so I'm just going to left click. Do I want to erase my source objects? No. Push return. I now want to erase that diagonal line, and I want to zoom out, and that is the quickest, dirtiest way to make a set of sliding double doors, because they're usually made out of glass, which is why I put them on the glazing layer. Some of you may have seen me doing this. You'll notice how my cursor turned into a magnifying glass just then. You can zoom in and out with your scroll wheel. If you want a little more control, if you type Z at the command prompt, press return, that gets you in sort of this zoom subcommand. But if you push return a second time, it enters what's called real-time zoom. And if you hold down your left click button and move your mouse vertically, then that will zoom you in and out. And you can see that if I move my mouse downwards, there's a little minus sign next to the magnifying glass, but if I move my mouse upwards, that minus sign turns into a plus sign. So it gives you just a little bit of finer control over your zoom. And when you let go of the mouse button, you're still in that zoom command. So when you're done, you just push return and you're back into your regular command state. So I'm going to make a copy. I'll do this. I'm going to make a copy of one of these little rectangles that I have for my door jamb. Grab a copy of this, and I'm going to bring it over here to this other wall. And I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it sit right there for now, because that's a fine place for it, because I haven't really determined where it's going to live yet. So I need to put a hole in this wall for the other window on this side. So OF for offset, 4'3", and I'm going to offset my grid line down. Okay. I now need to offset that new line again 6 feet. Okay. TR for trim. Press return. Select my cutting objects, which are those two lines. Done selecting my cutting objects. Press return. And again, I want to click just on the pink lines. I do not want to trim out the column grid. Done selecting my objects that I'm trimming. Press return. E for erase. What objects do I want to erase? P for previous. Push return. I'm done selecting my objects. I push return, and those items are gone. Now, I want to move that rectangle. I'm going to zoom in a hair. Move that rectangle. I'm going to start at this endpoint of the rectangle, the top corner, and I'm going to move it into position right there. Now I'm going to use my copy command. Select that rectangle, and I'm going to copy him from one of the bottom corners down to the bottom end of the window opening. And you really, when we're snapping on these items, just make sure that that green snap part shows up. Pan a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to draw 3 vertical lines, just regular lines. One on the outside. Press return. Because I'm done drawing that line, so I need to draw another line. Start my line command. One in the middle. Turn. And one at the inside. Now, one of the things I'm going to do that's a little on the artistic side. I've highlighted my object. You can see I've got my line weights visible, but I actually want to see these outer lines displayed with a thinner line weight. Now, This will work for the line weight settings that we're using in class. This kind of setting doesn't always work out in the real world because different people have different ways they print. So I'm going to look at my Properties tab. Your Property tab this whole section of your Property tab might actually be visible in the ribbon up here. It's just because I've got a smaller screen resolution right now. I'm going to click on this middle section, which allows me to change the active line weight of these lines. It allows me to override the setting for the layer. So I'm going to make that 0.9, just like that. There we go. Click cancel so I can cancel out all that, deselect my objects. Now I don't want this to be a single 6-foot wide picture window. I want to split this up. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. CO for copy. I'm going to highlight one of my window jams. If you go top down or if you go bottom up, it really doesn't matter. It's just where we click when making this copy is the important thing. So I'm done selecting the objects I want to copy. I push return. I do not want to use an endpoint. I'm going to zoom in. I want to use the midpoint as where I'm copying from. So this is my base point, is the midpoint of the skinny end of the jam. I'm going to zoom out, pan. I don't need to pan quite that far. And wait for the computer to finish thinking. And I'm just going to move up and down until I can find the midpoint snap. There it is, right there. Leave my mouse right there, left click. I'm done copying, I'll push return. Now because this is a window jam, your glass is not going to go all the way through it. So TR for trim. I'm going to select that rectangle. I'm done selecting my cutting object, so press return. And now move my mouse to trim that little piece out right there. Press return. That little piece of line that you see right there, that's the column grid line. So if I zoom back out, you can see that's that whole thing. Okay, zoom extents. All right. One more thing, and it's going to be down here in this corner. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our Windows Explorer, open him up. I'm going to look at the blocks, all the blocks that I've saved. We're actually going to start using one of these now. So I'm going to highlight my door block. And hopefully you guys are familiar with drag and drop operations. So all I'm doing is I'm left click and hold on to that door block, and I'm going to drag it right on top of my AutoCAD window. And I am instantly inserting that block that we made earlier in the class. And it doesn't matter where I put it, right where I click right now, because this is just sort of a temporary thing. So I'm going to left click just anywhere just to establish a point where it's going to be inserted. Now it's asking what scale I want. I could establish the XY scale using another mouse click, and you can see how the size is changing and morphing, and it's not uniform and all that stuff. Well, I actually want this door to be 36 inches wide. Now when we generated the door, we drew it 1 inch wide, so that when we insert a scale of 36, we know it's 36 inches. So I will type in 36 and push return. It's default behavior. It's going to assume that you want it to be as tall as you made it wide. We're going to say, yes, use the X scale factor. At this point, just push return. And right now, it's just asking for an angle to insert at. I'm going to drag until I am vertical, lock on that vertical axis lock, and left click. Now this, according to the handout, this door is swinging the wrong direction. That's fine. It's also on the wrong layer. We put it on the glazing layer. So I'm going to highlight my door, come back up here to my layers. It takes a while for this list to populate. And again, this is just a hardware issue. Come on. There we go. Scroll down the list. Keep going. There we go. A door E, an existing door. Okay, there we go. Now, my object is already highlighted, so MI for mirror, because I want to flip this thing because it actually swings in the other direction. The first point of the mirror line, I don't care where it is, I just want it flipped vertically. So I drag my mouse along the vertical axis lock, Left click a second time. Do I want to erase my source object? In this case, yes. There we go, just like that. Now, if you look at the handout, you'll see that this door is 6 inches. They actually misdimensioned this on the handout. In the real world, windows are always dimensioned to the outside edge of the jamb, here, at that point. Doors are dimensioned to the inside edge of the jamb. So when you talk about a 36-inch door, you're talking about the size of the door. In AutoCAD, typically you'll draw a door frame about 2 inches wide. So the hole you need for a 3-foot door is going to be 3 foot 4 inches. Now we can monkey with the math here if we wanted to. I'll just show you a different way of doing this. Now, I'm going to use the 6 inches on the handout as the distance between the hinge point of the door, where the hinge is actually installed on the door, and that corner down there at the bottom right-hand corner, or left hand. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Use my move command. I'm going to select my door, push return. Now I'm going to hover over the insertion point so I can get my object tracking. Drag my mouse down, haven't left clicked on anything, type 6 and push return. And now all I do is click on the endpoint. Now again, remember, you don't have to have your mouse on the endpoint as long as that green square that says endpoint is showing up. So if I left click right now, I'm actually selecting the endpoint there. All right, so I want to make this my current layer. What's the easiest way to make anything in the any object? What's the easiest way to make anything my current layer if the object I want is on the layer that I want to make current? Come up here, this guy right here, make current. So I click on that icon, and then I can select my door, and now that is my current layer, just like that. So just like we did the window jambs, we're going to do door jambs, and it's pretty much the exact same thing. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. I need to show you how to do this because we're going to use vector tracking or object tracking. So I'm using a rectangle. I'm going to hold my mouse over that endpoint or that intersection point so I can get my vector tracking. I'm going to start by going up. This is the width of the jamb. It's important that we start going along the length of the wall instead of going across the wall. So 2 inches. This is the start point of my rectangle. I'm going to hold my mouse over that intersection again, and this time I'm just going to drag my mouse to the opposite end of the wall. And you see that green X right there where my cursor is? That means that that's an implied intersection. Left click. There we go. That is exactly what I want. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to repeat the process down here at the hinge point of the door. So REC at the command prompt. Now this time I'm starting at the hinge point of the door, but I still need to go outward from the door. So instead of dragging my mouse up like I did at the strike edge, I want it to drag it down because this is a hinge point. So I drag it down 2 inches. This is the start point of my rectangle. I'm going to hover my mouse over that point, the hinge point of the door, to get my object tracking showing up. Drag my mouse to the left until it intersects with the wall. Left click. There we go. Okay, one more time we're going to use some rectangle and some object tracking. For me, it's one of the easier ways to trim this out. I can do this pretty quick, at least when my machine is cooperating with me. REC at the command prompt, press return. And I'm going to select the outside edge of the frame, hover there for a moment, get my object tracking, drag out, I don't care how far, move to the opposite corner, so it's the outside edge of the frame on the inside of the wall. I'm going to hover my mouse there for a second to get my object tracking, pull back a little, left click. This rectangle we just created is going to be the trim boundary. So TR for trim, select my rectangle, done selecting the objects I want to cut with, press return, and now I select the lines for the wall. Push return and erase the rectangle. Press return, zoom, extends. There's only one tiny little bit left that we have to do, and that's this line over here. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, offset, and we're going to take this this line right here, and we're going to offset it 2 inches, but we're going to do it twice, and both of them to the inside. There's one. There's the other. Highlight or end the command. Press return. I'm going to highlight these objects. I'm going to change the layer that they're drawn on. Click and click. Come up here and change its layer. It's not floor E, but it's a floor HRAL-E, so that's existing handrail. For anyone standing on the balcony, we do not want them to fall off. That would be bad. All right, zoom extents. There we go. These are the latest changes we made to A101. These are your existing conditions. This is the stuff that you're not allowed to change. But the rest of it, how you choose to put your apartment together, is completely up to you. I will be showing you some additional changes we're making in this file in the next video, so click save. Just like going to church, man. Save. Save, save, save. All right. So we just saved the drawing, and I'll see you in the next video.